Hello, and welcome to Cannabis Marketing Live, all puff, no fluff. I'm your host, Kendra Losi, and today we're going to be talking about the key things that cannabis product brands have in common. We're looking at how the secrets to scaling and where a lot of companies fall down. What can they do to improve when it comes to scaling and growing? We all have our favorite edibles, and so now we're going to talk about how they can reach more people and scale to grow so more of us can share our favorite edibles. So in today's episode, we have one of my favorite people in the industry, one of my favorite people overall, Meryl Gilbert, and she is the co-founder and CEO of TraceTrust. Welcome, Meryl.
Thank you. Thanks. So excited to be here. I know we've had this conversation offline for a long, long time, and it's great to finally be together. Plus, I'm a fangirl of the show itself. So
thank you.
I learned so much.
Thank you.
So thank you. Yeah. So TraceTrust, we believe that we make edibles credible, and we believe that really the whole future of cannabis, legal cannabis, and the future of hemp and CBD is all around having safe and reliable experiences. And so everyone who's ever had a edible has a story around it. And particularly, pre-California going recreational, but pretty much everyone. And so, it was either too much, too little. What does all of this mean to me? And now, as we've evolved, as the plant technologies, extraction methodologies, all of these things have come online, we have also found that there is a big difference between something that you buy in a licensed, regulated marketplace versus the gas station.
Oh yeah, the lab results on that are crazy, and yet I still see people on Amazon like, hey, this is $5, should I try it?
Well, and that's the other side of this conversation that you and I are going to have today is those of us that are in the industry and have been here, 5 years now? We actually have been doing this. So that relationship is that we are still the go-to for our friends, our family, our family's friends, their friends of friends, and I get people like texting me why they're looking at a product going,
oh, yeah.
Do I buy this?
Mm-hmm.
How do I know? And so more importantly, though, COVID shined a real light on a lot of different aspects of these products, right? And so everything from, oh my God, I'm in my dwelling and my kids are here, so I can't smoke and vape. That's still not okay. We're essential, so it really helps open the conversation across the United States, particularly on the fact that, wow, we do need this. It is, obviously a more natural and holistic way to calm yourself, to have less stress, and to, maybe not drink as much, because I don't know about the rest of you, but, 7 a.m. and sometimes I'm thinking, the cocktail. and it was interesting, and it has nothing to do with today's topic, but I was watching the Country Music Awards last night, and I swear to God, every single song was about having a drink.
Of course.
So just think if we were able to say, how to smoke, how to, in the same manner. So we're not there yet. But today's conversation is really about how do I create and make these wonderful, reliable, safe products, and all the different types that there are, and how do I scale that?
Absolutely. And so when we think about how to scale, I think the majority of us that have used edibles have that story of, I used one from the same tin, and then, 3 days later I used it and had an entirely different experience. And I think that that's something that you and I have had a lot of conversations about, is the goal of product companies is to create that experience, the desired experience for the consumer. So how do you see a lot of companies do that well? And where do you think the places are that they fall down or fail at?
Mm-hmm. So it's a great starting question. And so part of it is in the formulation. And part of it is in what's getting infused and how it's getting infused. And then more importantly, coming from the world of food and beverage, but whether it's food and beverage, nutraceutical, pharmaceuticals, there's exact methodology for making something. It doesn't fluctuate, right? That's what we call GMPs, good manufacturing processes. That's what we call SOPs, not something you downloaded from the internet and said, hey, look, I can get my license because I have this. It's like, no, these are actual methodologies that your team follows day in and day out. Now, where we've run into problems in particularly the cannabis world and now moving into a more regulated hemp world is that the regulatory body is focused on the plant itself, right? So again, levels of THC to CBD and the pesticides, molds, solvents, etc., all from the plant.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and again, unless your lab comes from food, beverage, pharmaceutical, does not look at the entire life cycle. So when you're creating an ingestible item, you have other things in there, flavor, sugar, whatever your ingredients are. So there's that process that has to happen. And so the companies that are doing it well normally have had, if they didn't have the expertise, they got the expertise from the outside to come in and make that product, to make sure that they are following those same protocols if they were making a cookie, a baked good, a chip, a beverage someplace else.
Absolutely. So if I was looking to start an edible company, right, where would you recommend that I start when it comes to creating a consistent product and consumer experience?
So this is the pre-work, and this is something we require with any client that we work with. But it should be, even as you are coming up with your idea at your table or with your group of people, in that creativity is number one, what are you trying to create? Before you even go look out at the marketplace, what is the experience? Who is the audience that you want this to? The thing that we are moving today from is the old stoner culture into lifestyle, health and wellness. When do I use this? Where do I want it? When does it start waxing? When does it not start? How long do I have to wait? And all of the things that go into this. So you start to lay those things out, and in the work that you and I've done on the marketing side is very similar. It's a stakeholder. Yeah. Who is it that I'm trying to, reach? And it's different at different times.
Yeah.
And then it's the price point. Is this something that I really want to be able to afford, and so I don't want it to cost more than X on the shelf? Or is it something that I'm really to dig in? It's part of my brand. It's part of our philosophy. So it needs to be vegan, keto, organic. We can't claim organic in this, but you can have organic ingredients. There's no reason why you couldn't. So that when, we do finally get to FDA, you can move into that claim. Claims on your label. These are the things that, we really get into trouble with. And people like to say a lot of things, but you need to be able to live up to those things, and you need to be able to deliver on that promise. And then how easy is it for somebody to look at that, understand what it is, and what's going to happen?
Absolutely.
All of that's the pre-work.
Absolutely. And it makes so much sense when you start to look at the expectations and the dosing and all of the things on the labels that end up in like a 3-point font that barely we can read because we're just trying to figure out what we're taking and ultimately what problem it's solving for us, right? If it's the, if it's the need to relax or feel better or reduce anxiety or be able to work from home all day alone or with kids, and what's the problem you're solving? But on the same side, what if I was an edible company that already had a product and I'm in Southern California and I'm in one market and I want to move to the rest of California, or, if I'm in one state, want to expand in the production of what I'm doing?
So again, now we have all of those attributes. This is what we want, and we want to create X. And so part of that is creating that product profile that's going to take you to the next step. And so again, I may not be able right now to take my cannabis from California to New Mexico. But what I can do is I can take that base formula, I can take all of the efficacy attributes that I want, and I can now go and try to match whatever that infusion methodology is with the same type, similar terpenes, efficacy, levels of THC. Like I can create that. And then the base of my formula, my manufacturing techniques, that can all travel with me.
So what exactly, when you say product profile, can you define that for us?
Yeah, so just like any kind of a profile that you create on something, it is everything that goes into it. So again, it goes back to what is it that I'm trying to create. So I'm trying to create a beverage. I want it to be, these are all the attributes that are going to be as part of that secret sauce in there. So, I want it to be in bubbly water. I want it to not have any natural sugars. I want it, so all of those things. And then it's all the ingredients that create that. And then again, what is the infusion methodology? So it's all of that. And that becomes the product profile. And it can evolve over time, but it can be a base formula. So it's always this with the flavors added. But that's how you create that.
So it's more than just the recipe, it's the recipe and the process?
Correct.
Awesome. And then, so when you, there's just so much there's so much where, bye Meryl.
I have here it is. So this is the live, that you get is that like, we no longer, like it could be a baby, it could be a dog,
I love it. And it's so true. Whenever I was talking to someone yesterday and I asked them if they wanted to be on the show, and it was like, I don't like to do video. And I hear that response a lot, but the reality is live is live. Like it's never going to be perfect. And that's part of what I love about it. So, there's so much that goes into when you have creating your product profile for consistency and then looking at a manufacturing plan. Are there things that what are the top 3 things, give or take, that you find that most people are missing in their product profile and in their manufacturing plan?
So there's a couple of things. So there's you create your own facility. I've been doing this smaller in batch. Now I want to make more, and I need to figure out how I'm going to do that. So there is a process of bringing in the different, types of equipment that you need to scale, mm-hmm. and how do I make decisions around that? Or I'm now, big enough that I want to go to somebody else that is what we call a co-packing facility that can co-manufacture. And that relationship becomes really integral because it really comes into your product pricing. It comes, you want to hopefully that they have the expertise that you need, and you want to be able to leverage not only their expertise but also their supply chain.
Absolutely.
And so this is a really careful relationship. And there's also, the protection around your IP, right? Your intellectual property. And we're seeing this play out in real time right now when you're seeing, with the plant-based meats and the facilities that we're making them, and then they're trying to knock off and create another. Like that is a really fine line, as opposed to, hey, we make, these beverages for everybody and we can make yours, right? It's not going to be that different. It's just going to be your branding. It might be a little tweak to your flavors but you're basically, they're making the same sparkling infused water for everybody, and that's fine, right? Because that's what you want. You want that mass scale, and you want the advantage of what those cost benefits are for the efficiency of that.
Sorry. It's apparently one of those days. The dogs are on target. I've got mine barking. Now he's locked out of the room. Yours is in your lap. They're like, hey friend. So, if you're watching, feel free to drop questions in the comments. Meryl is a wealth of information, and we're talking specifically about how to grow and scale your cannabis or hemp CBD business. There's so many, and you mentioned the lab testing earlier, and it's so critical to have that, especially if it's a little more voluntary on the hemp side. But what do you find, where are the catch points that people need to pay attention to when you're working with testing?
So again, let's go back to testing and production because they all go hand in hand. And so, one of the things that we have been advocating for since the beginning of really moving into this world over the last 5 years is around consistency and standardization in testing, particularly in ingestible space. This is very different than, again, the flower and extract and et cetera, and tinctures. So it's really, we have been advocating for a universal standard around that, because if you have a lot of labs that come on board and they all have, same equipment, maybe proprietary, but how they acquire samples, how they treat those samples, and particularly around these low dose, is not in their normal repertoire unless they came from food and beverage, pharmacy, et cetera, right? So really getting into that nitty gritty. On the other side of that is you want to build this relationship with your labs, because you really want to be able to have that ahead of your actual batches going in. So if you're in the R&D phase of creating your product line, you want to, a lot of times we do as 99% of it done without the actual infusion, unmedicated, to get it to that, to make sure the equipment works, get it, and then you get that testing materials done, and you send out samples before that, because where people get caught up in again, is not always because the cannabis is so tightly and the hemp is so tightly tested, but it's the other things. It's the sugar. It's pesticides because they insisted on having, a candied lemon rind, right? And so it's in the rind. That's got all of that nastiness in it. And so, how do you build that supply chain? How do you make sure that you acquire enough of those source ingredients so that you can sit on it for a little while and be able to carry that over time? But that, it's testing early and throughout, and not just waiting till your finished goods are done, because it costs a lot of money to relabel. It costs a lot of money to lose an entire batch, and there, with a lot of these things, particularly with pesticides, there's no remediation. It's done. You got to dump it. So that's, again, this is very, very expensive.
It's so hard to hear about companies that have to dump their products. There's so much work that goes into it, and to have it be something else, not the cannabis part, is like, we've all heard those horror stories, and many of you watching have lived through them. One of the questions that I have while you were talking is, I've heard stories about different labs getting different results. How do you recommend someone finds a lab that, like, what are your thoughts around that?
So again, this is part of just not jumping around. It's nice to have two, but it's nice to have two that are collaborating, so you're not varied experiences. But the other is also that receiving, how do they handle, are they set up to handle your types of products? Have they had experience with that? If they don't have experiences, or people on their team that have previous experience from outside cannabis that know how to work with that. And again, it's the work that we're trying to create from TraceTrust around standardization in the whole, we're working on with ASTM, which is a big standard international group, to adapt our methodologies for ingestibles so that can become a universal way in which these are handled. And we're also active in a study with a new organization on beverages in California that also will help guide for the future of those, because there's so many variants. And again, this low dose versus high dose is really intricate. And then the other piece is, the third-party audit system, which is not necessarily, been part of this world. And it's what we advocate. We created a true dose for cannabis derived products, and we created hGMP for hemp derived products. And this really is very similar to a non-GMO or certified organic process, but it looks at the life cycle of a product. It looks at, what does the label say? How easy is it when I open it up to understand what that is? And then it is also, the entire source of ingredients, what we talked about, so not just the plant, but everything that's in there. And then it's a standard test that we have that the labs run on the homogeny. So that candy bar that's supposed to be, each is 100 milligrams and each square is 10. Well, maybe you don't break it exactly. So did I get 10 plus, or, and did it, melt down and all, come out to 100 milligrams? So, those are the kinds of things we look at. And then it's the education to the consumer. This is still very fragmented. But again, ingestibles are going to react very differently for anybody. You want something fast, you want something, it's a sublingual or a tincture under the tongue. It's something that dissolves, a beverage. These are all really great vehicles for a quicker onset and a quicker offset. When you get into the gummies and the chocolates, so those first groups are like 15, 20 minutes. The chocolate and the gummy are probably 20 to 30 minutes before you feel it. A baked good can take a whole lot longer, and it can be 4 hours before you even get it. So, it's going into your system differently. And then it is, what's your diet, right? So if you're on a keto diet and you have sugar and you eat a gummy, we don't know. You don't know what that's going to be like for you. It's going to spike your blood sugar. It's going to have, did you eat? Did you not eat? And then that's where that product profile, that's what you're trying to create, becomes really important, because you're trying, what is the occasion I'm going to use it? Am I going to use it for clarity in the morning? Am I going to use it to go to sleep at night? And then we start talking into the future that we're getting closer to, the CBN and the Delta 8s and the 9s and, and terpenes. And that's the exciting place of where we're at.
Oh, yeah. And I love it when I hear people talking about that, because I'm like, oh, tell me more. What are you doing with that? How do you how do you make that happen?
And there's companies that are doing it now, and they're really making beautiful things. And so, that the future is here, and it's getting better. Again, that's, part of where we started this was because the sophistication around the infusion methodology and extraction is really pointing, getting us much closer to really predictable experiences.
Now, why would you, and you touched on this, and I just want to reinforce it a little bit more, or reiterate it. Why would you recommend that someone uses a third-party manufacturing audit?
Because why should you, just because I say it's the best product out there and I say this is everything and you should trust me, and you should trust my co-packer, and it's like, yeah.
But if it's
just not that transparent right now.
But if it's already gone through the California, I'm talking California labs right now, but if it's already been approved from a California lab, why would I still need someone else to look at it?
Because again, when we're talking about dosing and efficacy, there's a big variance that we even discussed here. And so, since with a third-party validation, it does a couple things. I believe, we have people here that are actually manufacturing and producing products right now. For them, it is something that actually can assist them with their product liability, because it validates their good manufacturing processes and their SOPs, and it shows that they can replicate this time and time and time again. So on your insurance and your liability side, it really protects you. On the consumer side, we don't have anything, and that's kind of what we're trying to create, that shows you on a package that, these claims, they're saying it's vegan, they're saying it's this. There's nothing that validates that any of that is true. And so that's where a third party, that's why when you go out and you look for something that is gluten-free in your everyday groceries, you want to know that it is recognized by some outside entity to say that. You don't buy electronics that don't have a UL code on it. You don't.
No, it's totally true. As someone who's deathly allergic to gluten, I by far rely on those labels that say gluten-free, but you're right. It's so scary to think that there's no one checking that it's just a statement they're making.
And everybody's like putting it on the bud tender, and that's not fair either, because the bud tender has got, a store full of products, and they can maybe tell you about one or two in any category. But again, they're like going to spend 15 minutes with you. Maybe over time you start this, but now they're dropping it off at my house. So yeah. I'm completely relying on a virtual experience of knowledge.
Absolutely. What there's so many things here that you've said. It's like when you start talking, it's always so dense. I'm like, okay, how can we pick this apart? And I think that one of the big things that I'm curious about is many companies assume that they have their product, they know what it is, they know the process. What holes do you typically see when you audit company product profiles?
So oftentimes the label.
Okay.
So again, making a claim on a label that it's not intentionally misleading, but it doesn't necessarily, cover. It was just like you said, like if it's so small, like no, call out the things that are most important on there. It doesn't devalue or mess with your design, but it should be the most important things you want people to know about your product should be what it is and what's it going to do.
Yep.
And you shouldn't have to hunt around for that. So that's one. And then the other is, this it's not sticking with that lab relationship, not sticking, really being there. And we oftentimes create really great products, but we don't deliver over time. So when you jump from that small boutique into major, production, it's really making sure that you've translated that and that whatever that original formulation can go up and perform at the same level as even when it was still the small things that you were able to touch each and every one of.
I love it. As we start to wrap up, what advice would you give companies that are looking to scale what they already have? Are there 3 tips that you would give them?
So number one, really have that dialed in about your formula, what it is, how it performs, and what are all the things that go into that so that it can be replicated. The other is, spending time on the manufacturing process and how is that going to get now scaled up to meet that, and then the packaging side of that, right? So don't try to, time it so when you go to do your scaling, you've used up everything in the past, so there can, or you're able to destroy whatever you weren't using prior, so there's no mix-up in what that end product is and how it gets out to the public. And then keeping your stakeholders all, your distributors and your, and your retailers all up to speed on what's happening.
I love it. Those are great tips. And I think that it all boils down to creating that ultimate consumer experience, so they know what to expect. No one wants surprises when they're coming through to purchase products. They're not like shopping and grabbing a mystery edible out of a grab bag. No, people are super specific about it. To your point earlier, I've had friends, and I'm sure you have too, and I'm sure lots of you watching have as well. Like, I have friends that test me questions. I have friends that'll be in, Whole Foods taking pictures of a CBD product there because they want to know what's going to work. But, I think that many of us have seen the lab results that some of those CBD particular products out there have, 2% of the CBD that they say they're having. Or, they say they have 5 bazillion milligrams of CBD and there's 5. So it's by far
this is why. So we're still a young industry. We have stronger players coming in. We have a lot of organizations working collaboratively to try to get through this, and more importantly, the more legal access we get, the more research we get. And so as those things come hand in hand, we'll definitely be able to do a better job for the end user in identifying those products that really give them a very wonderful experience time and time again.
Absolutely. And the last thing I'm going to say is that I'm assuming, because you come from food and beverage, so I'm assuming that as legalization happens, you're going to get more experts who already have these processes and this knowledge and this information in place. So if we're not, as a cannabis industry, if we're not putting those things in place now, we're going to fall behind as soon as things keep changing from a legal perspective.
The good news is, again, we already are professionals, a lot of us that have come into this over the last few years. And if anything, I think we really feel an obligation to bring along the legacy companies with us, to bring, people, women, people of color. We still struggle. We have, less access. We have to jump through more hoops, but we have vast knowledge of experiences prior to being in this world. And so that sophistication level, that ability to already work within really highly regulated guidelines is making it that much easier and faster. And so the only problem is, like everything else in the United States, it's state by state. And until we can get to, some kind of unified agreement across the entire country, we're going to struggle. But we have Canada, that is now entering year 3. There, we're going to see rapid growth and techniques that we can marry. We've got Israel, we've got countries that have been, having legal markets for some time and really can, help facilitate getting that a little faster here. But we just have to, right now, one step at a time.
Absolutely.
One state at a time.
Absolutely. Okay, before we go, are you ready for the speed round?
Okay, I'll try.
Okay, ready? Question number 1. What is your favorite product, cannabis or hemp CBD product?
So right now, I'm just really into beverages, and I'm not going to call out one or the other, but I love them. I love that, it's easy. There's so many people doing creative things with them, and it is, it just makes it kind of easy, when we could socialize. But, again, even in these times, not having to have a drink, an alcoholic drink. So I'm just really excited about the whole world of beverages.
Love it. Yeah, it's growing so quickly. There's so many. Whereas, 2 years ago, it was just a little blip, and now they're everywhere. And some of them are so good.
Yeah. Really good.
Question number 2. What media, podcasts, videos, research are you paying attention to that you recommend?
Oh, gosh. I think, Javier has said Benzinga, Forbes, that travel over. I mean, Kira's, new podcast has been phenomenal because it's women leaders in this industry, and it's really been great. I just think that's just super exciting. And I think, on the traditional side, I think TNN has been, really consistent of telling this story, and and Vice is kind of refinding its way, but that really kind of was a great eye-opener in bringing this conversation into all different age groups. And I love the diversity that we are seeing in all of these applications. So that's very
cool. I love it. Love it. Okay, last question of the speed round. You mentioned you might have an offer for people. So share that and let us know how people can reach you and connect.
Yes, so they can reach me, obviously, through TraceTrust.com or Merril, Merril, at TraceTrust.com. And I am offering a 30-minute conversation of $250 value. Call me up and we can talk just about anything you want to. And we will share that expertise and help you navigate any questions that you might have around formulation, manufacturing, and troubleshoot for you.
That is amazing and super generous. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You doing that and offering that for everybody. You guys, while she was just talking, TraceTrust.com and their Instagram account was on the screen below, so be sure and reach out. And I just want to say thank you for joining us today for this episode of Cannabis Marketing Live, all puff, no fluff. And be sure to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Like and subscribe also if you're watching on Facebook. And we will be back in we'll be back in, wow, I just rushed 2020. I'm like, get it over.
We are trying to rush 2020.
Like, we'll talk to you in 21. No, I'll be back first Thursday.
Everybody vote. Vote. Help your friends vote. Help anyone you can vote. It's super important.
Listen to what she's saying. Vote. I will see you guys the first Thursday of October. Thank you guys for watching. Drop any questions in the comments and tag us, and we will be happy to jump in and answer them for you. Thank you. Bye.